back to my channel. Today's video is gonna be a mid-April wrap-up in which I'm gonna be talking about all the books that I've read so far in the month of April. The first book that I finished was Catching Fire by Susan Collins. So this is the second book in the Hunger Games trilogy. The story picks up directly after the events of the first book. We follow Katniss as she faces the aftermath of her actions in the arena. I only read the Hunger Games trilogy once before. I've seen the movies multiple times, but the books I've read only once. And from what I could remember, the second one was my favorite and I was definitely not disappointed. I love the direction that the plot took. I really enjoy the way the consequences were described in this book. You can clearly see how vulnerable the state is and how it's not afraid to go to radical measures to defend their power. I really love that we got to see more of the real life in this book. This was the main focus of this first, let's say, half of the book was the real life in the District 12. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think in the first book we got to see just a glimpse of the life in District 12 and then we got directly to the Hunger Games. And in this book we get to see how much the life really sucks in District 12. So yeah, definitely really enjoyed this book again. I really love the character development that we see in this book. To be honest, the character that I love the most is Haymitch still. I absolutely adore him. I love the way he's been written in this book and how throughout his life he has to deal with PTSD that he got during the Hunger Games that he was in. I actually really enjoyed Peter's story as well. I think he was the most genuine person in here and the one who could think the most clearly, I'd say. I know a lot of people don't like Peter. They think that he's like a warm, overcooked pasta, like without any character whatsoever. I really enjoy his character and his arc throughout this story. I think he decided to take actions for himself rather than following blindly what everyone else told him to do, which it was nice to see in here. I really enjoyed my time with this story and I'll be picking up Mockingjay very time soon. And from then I picked up a really big and intimidating book first. It has almost 650 pages and is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I wanted to read something by Sanderson for years now. I'm a big fantasy reader, but I also enjoy a lot of other genres as well. So I never got a chance to pick up anything by Brandon Sanderson. But this book I completely fell in love with. Absolutely amazing start to a trilogy. This is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy. The story is set in a world when the bad guy won, and the world is really not a happy place right now. The Dark Lord has been in power for the past 1,000 years. The society is divided into two groups. There are the noblemen who are in favor of the bad guy, and we have people who are called Ska, which are basically slaves or the second sort people. Scars are used as workforce, or they basically homeless people living on the streets who must make their ends meet by stealing things from the noblemen. In the story we follow Vin, who is a 16-year-old Ska girl who's put into a rebellion group. She meets a crew who's led by Kelsier, who is what we call a Mistborn. In this world, people gain power from metals, and there are 8 main metals that they can use to gain power. Obviously, not everybody is an allomancer, who is basically the person who is able to use metals and the power of metals. In this world, we have Mistings, who are people who can use one of the 8 main metals, and we also have people called Mistborn, who are very rare in the society and they can use all 8 main metals. Kelsier, who is the head of the rebellion group, is a Mistborn, and Finn finds out that she's one herself as well. I think this book was really amazingly written. The characters in this story are all perfectly fleshed out. Obviously, Vin and Kelsey are two main characters in here. They each have different specific personality, but also the crew members, they all have distinct personalities. They all have their own stories, their own passions, and they're so uniquely different that they feel so real. I absolutely love the dynamics in between the characters. The crew members, they're all friends, and they have this friendly banters going in between each other, but they also love themselves so dearly, and it was such a wonderful thing to read about. Vin, as a person who has just recently been picked up from the street, who spent her whole life not trusting people and being hurt by people. She's obviously struggling with her PTSD from that time, and seeing her evolving and getting more trusting towards the group is something wonderful. Obviously not everything happens at once, and many times we see how various group members telling her that she still has a lot to learn about trust and friendship, but even the slow development is so satisfying. It feels very real. So I think characters are the main strong point of this book. Another thing, the plot is absolutely amazing. I think in series, a lot of times we find that the first book is not a book in itself, it's just an introduction for what is to come. This book was kind of a story in itself. It had a beginning, middle, and end. So the end of the book was the end of the book read as if it was the end of the story, even though it was only the first one of the 3 books. Ending left us with most of the things explained, with only a few bits that were left unsaid and unexplained, which we want you to jump right into the second book to find out what happened next. But literally everything in this book is important. I think Sanderson has thought out this story so well, and there are bits at the beginning of the story that are really important later on, and we find out why these things have been introduced in the first place. And I think this is such a great storytelling. If you can tie all these loose ends within one book, you're a genius. The only thing I'd say that may put off people, apart from its size, because a giant of a book, is the thing that I'll call info dumping. So the way Sanderson builds his world is he just dumps loads of information on you in chunks. So the way he's doing it, he's introducing some subjects and you get so much information about them, and they obviously are explained, but it's really difficult for you to wrap your head around it and to see how it works in practice. And then there's nothing for another 200 pages, and then again you have loads of information dumped on you again, and then you will have to spend another 200 pages figuring out how this works within the story, which for me it didn't really bother me, but I know that it may be an issue for some other people. If I'm being honest, the first 200 pages, I was, not that I didn't like it, but I think it was quite slow and there was a lot of information in there. I think you kind of realize that what the crew is trying to achieve is kind of hopeless, so you find yourself not really rooting for that team. And then once you get to the point that you see the light in the tunnel, you think that perhaps this may all work out and the crew is onto something, and when you think, hey, this may actually work, this is the moment that you get into the story and you connect to the This is the moment you get to the story and you start caring and rooting for the characters, and that's when you really are pulled into this story. That was for me when I started loving this book so much. Definitely I'm gonna continue with this one. It was a 5 out of 5. Man, that ending, so many things happen. I'm not gonna be able to tell you what's gonna happen, obviously, but you have to read this book. If you have not read this book already, I'm probably the last person in the universe who's never read this, because it's such a popular book. But either way, from now on, I'm Team Sanderson. I'm gonna try to finish this series. If I love it, I'm gonna read everything that he puts out there. The third thing that I finished this month was kind of an unusual read for me, because this is not the kind of thing that I read most of the time, and that was the graphic novel Mouse by Art Spiegelman. This is a true story of Art Spiegelman's father. This story is told in kind of interview perspective, so we follow the author of this graphic novel trying to interview his father. So we follow the life of Spiegelman in his present day, which was in 1970s, and that's when the father is telling him the story of how he survived. We follow Spiegelman's father's story. It starts just before the war and during war, and then obviously we get bits and pieces of present day. I normally don't read many graphic novels. I tend to pick up mostly just regular standard novels. This is a very popular graphic novel, so I decided to pick it up just because I want to read more of each genre, and I fully enjoy this one. I think the art style is absolutely amazing. It's all in black and white, and different nations are depicted by different animals. The Polish Jews are depicted as mice, and the Germans are pictured as cats. What I really loved about this one was the details in the drawing. Some of the art had some little details that if you don't pay attention, you would miss that detail, which is still important to the story or important to the history in general. I think the way that father is telling his story is very strange, very unique, because he's trying, or he has already distanced himself to it. It doesn't feel like these atrocities happen to him actually. So the way he tells the story is actually sometimes humorous. You would think that humor and Holocaust don't really work together. It's actually mind-blowing how well this works in this story. I think the characters in here, even though they were depicted as animals, they were so human and so relatable. The thing that strikes the most about this book is that the father doesn't really realize that he's dealing with PTSD. We see how the war has affected him, how cold, snappy, and really ridiculous he's behaving in the modern day. He has also had to deal with his wife's suicide, which we find out right at the beginning of the story. And I think just finding out such a huge thing at the beginning of a story, and really the way that the author dryly states that this is what happened is just a great summary of what's gonna happen. So the general theme of this story is being imprisoned by one's own past, and how no matter how long it's been, you still are haunted by the things that happen to you. There's a line that really sums up this story, and I'm just gonna read it quickly right now because I think it's absolutely great. Everything Vladek went through, it's a miracle he survived, but in some ways he didn't survive. This is just a perfect summary of what this book is trying to get to. It's not even trying to tell the horrible Holocaust story. It is a story about a person dealing with the aftermath It was a very unusual read for me, but a really impactful and great story. Another 5 stars of the month. And the last book that I wanted to talk to you about is Autobiography by Christina Lauren. This is a YA fiction story with an LGBTQ plus motifs. We follow Tanner, a bisexual high school student. His family has just recently moved from San Francisco to a small town in Utah in which most of the people are Mormons. He obviously feels that in this specific environment that he's in right now, he can't be himself. He can't tell anyone that he's bisexual, that he likes both guys and girls, because obviously this is totally unacceptable in the Mormon religion. We follow his life as he just starts a class in which he has to write and finish a book within the semester. His mentor in that class is Sebastian, who took his class last year and he got his book published. As they spend more and more time together, there's this attraction developing in between them and some other feelings. Sebastian himself is a Mormon. We follow their story through ups and downs, through trying to find out who they really are, what they want from life, and what's the most important thing in life. I think it was a really enjoyable read. In this book we see the two opposites. On one hand we have Tanner's family, who are really open and accepting towards him and the person who he is, and from the other hand we have Sebastian's family, who are all Mormons, who follow a set of rules and are not able to accept certain choices that Sebastian makes. We also have Sebastian himself, who's struggling with identifying himself and accepting himself for the person that he is, rather than for the person that the society wants him to be. I think it was a very enjoyable story, and I think the representation and the way that coming out and finding yourselves may be difficult in general in society, and especially in very judgmental society, is explained and written really well in this book. Definitely one of this book that it's interesting to read about, even though this problem may not really concern you directly, but it's good to see how one person's actions and point of views can influence and impact another person struggling with something themselves. It is a YA fiction, so I was not expecting anything really spectacular, and I didn't get anything spectacular, but I think it was still a very good story, very solid one. I was interested throughout the book. It was not a point that I didn't want to pick it up again. I think it's one of those books that are really light-hearted, but dealing with very hard and difficult social problems. So I think it's really worth picking up, especially for the younger audience. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Alright guys, so these are all 4 books that I wanted to chat about with you today. Let me know if you've read any of those. It's been an absolutely amazing reading month so far, and it's only been 2 weeks and I've read 3 5-star books and 1 4-star books. What's happening? Honestly, I'm thrilled. I'm looking forward to reading some more this month, and yeah, let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books as well, and what did you think about them. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for some more bookish content. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you with another video soon. Bye!